As housing continues to get more expensive across the country, the Trump administration says illegal immigration is to blame.
The Department of Housing and Urban Development recently released its 2025 Worst Case Housing Needs Report to Congress. It says in part, this year's report shows two realities. The first is that economic growth has been insufficient to lift the wages of low-income renting families high enough to make rent affordable. The second is that national macroeconomic policies, such as record immigration, have combined to drive sustained high rental demand, which has continued to place upward pressure on rent prices.
HUD Secretary Scott Turner recently appeared on Fox News and slammed the Biden administration for its immigration policies that he says are making homes less affordable.
During the Biden administration, the immigration policies crippled our nation. Over 12 million illegal immigrants or illegal aliens came across our border, really stifling our housing affordability and supply issue in our country. And when you have this many illegal aliens coming over, taking homes that are supposed to be for the American people, affordability is automatically going to go up.
This is, of course, not the first time Republicans have blamed the Biden administration for the country's housing troubles. Here was J.D. Vance making similar claims last year in his vice presidential debate against Tim Walz.
We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership.
But those on the left are disparaging the new HUD report and accusing Republicans of failing to enact real housing policy reform. Erin Reichlin-Melnick, a former immigration lawyer, writes, quote, "The White House has been hammering this message as they flail on affordability. Quote, nothing at all is our fault, while literally everything is the fault of undocumented immigrants, a group whose numbers we keep claiming are higher and higher every time we need a bigger scapegoat." Meanwhile, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren says, quote, "We are in a housing crisis. Trump has said he wants to lower the cost of housing. So why did his allies in Congress stop a bipartisan bill that was designed to do just that?"
The senator was referring to the Road to Housing Act, a comprehensive housing reform bill that supporters were hoping would get included in the National Defense Authorization Act. It did pass through the Senate, but was thrown out in the version of the NDAA that was passed by the House on Wednesday.
A lot in this topic, Amber. Initially hearing about the HUD report and seeing that Fox interview, my initial instinct was to think, oh, this is like scapegoating. And then I thought, well, let me check myself here, because on the surface, when Vance talks, for example, he claims there are 25 million illegal immigrants. Other estimates are lower, but for the sake of the hypothetical, he says, well, there's 25 million people, though they're driving up prices. The Trump administration's policies cracking down on immigration has stabilized or lowered prices. That does not, on its face, sound implausible. I then went on and spent a couple of hours looking through various statistics, and to my mind, the numbers don't really bear that out, particularly when it comes to the claim that the Trump administration's crackdown on immigration has stabilized or reduced rent prices, because the numbers involved, like obviously they haven't deported 25 million people, right? They've deported about 600,000. That in a nation of 340 million people seems a very small number if you're actually claiming that that's what has changed rental prices.
Yeah, I don't think they've had success yet. I mean, the HUD report points out that it's all foreign migration, illegal immigration being 30% of that, which has driven up rent prices, is responsible for 60% of the increase in rent prices nationwide, and they claim 100% in New York and California. Again, that's all migrants, so the illegal immigrant question is a smaller proportion of that, but still significant, right? And I totally agree. The Trump administration has not deported enough people to bring rent prices down and say that that's the reason why that's happening. But it is, I think, important to point out that when you bring in, millions of people, it's it's a supply and demand question, right? It's a basic law of economics. You have more people vying for the same number of homes. Homes have not increased. The supply of homes has not increased enough to outpace the number of new arrivals that we've had in the past 5-10 years. So, of course, prices will go up because of that. There's also a lot of blue states and cities that have offered free housing to illegal migrants, which inevitably drives up the prices in other places. There's also a policy under the Biden administration where Afghan refugees were getting FHA loans under less strict terms than American citizens that the current HUD secretary has undone at the beginning of the Trump administration. They were basically not doing full credit checks. They were getting some preference for some FHA loans. And so when we're talking about the America First Trump policy, it makes perfect sense to me that this would be a message that they would want to hammer. The impact of either prioritizing or giving benefits to people who are not American citizens, while American citizens are bearing the brunt of a massive housing price increase.
That's interesting. I just want to get back to the supply and demand issue that you raised, because I think that is really important. And to my mind, it goes to some of the complexities of immigration. Because even if you take Vance's 25 million figure, that's about roughly 7% of the total population. Now, then so that's part of the demand for housing. But there's also how housing is supplied, i.e. by the construction of new homes.
Right.
And a lot of estimates, I mean, there's some differing estimates as to how much of a proportion of the construction industry is comprised of illegal immigrants. But around, most of the estimates cluster around the low 20s, like 1 in 5 construction workers is roughly an illegal migrant. So therefore, let's say, Stephen Miller becomes emperor and every single illegal migrant in the country is thrown out. You have reduced the population by 7%. You've reduced the people currently working to construct new homes by about 20%. And so now you and I have, I think, some similar feelings about illegal migration and its effects on labor law practices, but it's not just as simple as the demand side being reduced, you're reducing the supply side as well.
Yeah, totally right. And J.D. Vance addressed this in a New York Times interview shortly after the election. And he was asked this question by the host of, well, aren't you going to have housing costs increase because you're going to have to pay American workers a higher wage, or there won't be enough construction workers generally to build the new homes that people want to see? And his response was sort of sardonic, which was, yes, you're right. In the 60s and 70s, when we didn't have all of these illegal immigrants, nobody was building new homes. And of course, that wasn't the case. There were Americans working. And he pointed out that there's a much lower labor force participation rate now, especially among young men who would be the prime people who would be working in those construction jobs, who either have been priced out of the industry or have left because they feel disaffected or whatever it is. Yeah. But we used to have a labor force participation rate of 75, 80%. It's in the high 60s to low 70s now. There's roughly 3 to 4 million people who are out of the workforce and are of prime working age to do those jobs. Now, I take the point that they would be paid higher wages, which would increase the cost of building the housing. But I think the mass deportation would outweigh the potential rise in how much it costs to build those homes. And broader, I would say on the supply issue, there needs to be some deregulation because it is very expensive just to get the permits, et cetera, to build a home. And this is part of the left-wing abundance agenda, actually.
It is, yeah, no, that is definitely part of the... We're being told to wrap, but I'm going to overrule that because I do want to make one very final point, which is in relation to housing, which is a very complicated issue. One thing that doesn't get mentioned enough, in my view, when it comes to rental issues is the massive expansion in corporate landlords, corporations that own a massive number of properties. We don't like them.
No.
The number of single-family homes owned by corporate landlords has increased from 10% in 2010 to 26% in 2023. That obviously
Blackstone, get out of here.
Anyway, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I wonder will she draw us together as well? She's drawing the ire of the Conservative right after meeting with a progressive activist group. Why she says she met with Code Pink coming up. Stay with us.